Thank you very much, John, for that kind, I think, introduction. It's true what they say, no good deed goes unpunished. You write a few books, you're invited to speak, and the introducer insists on embarrassing you by saying he went to Harvard College, Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School. It's true, I was in the slow reading class, so it took me 3 times to get it, but John didn't tell you the end of the story. When I started my 3rd tour of duty at the Harvard Business School, I was blessed with a very constructive and compassionate class. They understood what my problem was, and in the first week of my first year of business school, they organized the Send Sliwocki to Harvard Medical School Fund. And I recognized that it was time to bring education to a close and get back to work. Slava Isusu Christu. Thank you very, very much for this priceless opportunity to address this priceless group of people. I can just get off the stage right now and ask you to spend the next 30 minutes just thinking about what you saw. The people that you saw around the world rewarding a first miracle with a second miracle. Before I begin, however, I have a sort of personal question to ask of you. Does anyone here believe in confession? Thank you. Okay, so I have a confession to make. I stand before you, and I did not know that the UKU School of Journalism, formed just a few years ago, is now #1 in Ukraine. I did not know that 41% of the entering undergraduate class scored in the top 5% of the National Independent Testing Exam. I didn't know that 40% of the students in the master's programs come from outside of Halychyna. I didn't know that there are more than 100 academic partners of UKU, including not just great Catholic universities like Notre Dame or Fordham, but non-Catholic universities like Wharton and others as well. I didn't know that a team from our program of Masters of Data Science went to Canada to take part in a global competition, the Queen's Innovation Challenge. They finished 3rd in an incredibly competitive field. They won a $6,000 3rd prize, which was good. But what was 10 times more important is they developed a set of ideas and programming that helped, in the real world, Bank of Montreal improve their revenues by 3% in one of their most important product lines. And I didn't know that UKU itself last year was voted one of the 10 best brands in Ukraine. If I didn't know that, I wonder how many other people didn't know that, and what we could accomplish if we let everybody know that, and a few other things that I'll mention. Before we start, I want to be a little bit irritating because everyone knows I'm an irritating speaker. And I'm going to ask everybody here to do something that I promise won't hurt, but I'm going to come back at you again and again. Please think of one person that you know who should know UKU doesn't. And please write their name down. Now, you can write it on a piece of paper, as we did yesterday with the alumni, or for those of you who have seen Amadeus, you can be like Mozart and compose in your head, but please write down the name of one person that you know who should know about UKU, and I'll come back to that. Before we start, I'd just like to leave us, or start us, with 3 questions. What is a startup? What is a door? And what is a book? Has everyone been to the center and seen the new campus? Okay? I've been there, and I didn't know whether I had come to Lviv or whether I had come to Silicon Valley. And then when I looked at the growth, 3 bachelor's programs to 10, 2 master's programs to 16, it's the kind of growth that I don't see in normal organizations. It's the kind of growth that I see in startups. Now, in my business, everybody steals ideas from everybody else without attribution. I'm not going to do that. This idea, this question of a startup, came from one of our great fistfight meetings at UKU from Volodymyr Turchinovsky, and it is an idea worth thinking about. Because, does anyone know any great startups? Help me out here. Anyone know any great startup companies? Has anyone heard of Uber? Yes, please. Apple. Apple's resurrection is a great example. I gave away the store with Uber. Other startups that you know. Sorry? Thank you. Sorry, Airbnb, great one. Anybody else? Lyft, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, say again. Kick. Make your own list of startups. And then ask yourself, in this list, how does our startup compare? Very fast growth, but let's remember what all startups are like. They are very focused. They have to be to survive. They are very fast. They are very frugal. They are very obsessed with their customer. They are very obsessed with quality. And they are very obsessed not just with protecting their culture, but strengthening their culture. And they are very obsessed with not paying for advertising, but creating word of mouth. Word of mouth. Who normally provides word of mouth for a university? It's alumni. And yesterday I had the privilege to address a group of 160 fantastic alumni. We have great alumni, but there are very few of them. Why? Because we just started. And what I invite us to do as a group is for us to be the alumni organization of this startup for the next 20 years until we have 20,000 alumni from the workings of this university. The growth has been fantastic, and I take my hat off to the people here for constantly worrying about protecting the quality and the culture during that growth. And I'd like to point to the role that we can play in protecting that quality. 41% of the entering class is in the top 5% of the country. 100% of the computer sciences entering class is in the top 1% of the country. The more we can focus our efforts on creating scholarships from the territories around the world to enable the best students to come here, the more the computer science profile of the top 1% will be a leading indicator for what this university will become 3 to 4 years into the future. UKU is a startup like Airbnb, like Uber, like Tesla, like SpaceX. Airbnb can get you a room. Uber can get you a ride. Tesla can get you a car. SpaceX can get you a rocket. Now, most of you don't want a rocket, but if you're in the satellite business, you do want a rocket. What can UKU get you? UKU can get you a half-century of high achievement and contribution from a highly talented student. It's not the same as a ride, it's not the same as a room, it's not the same as a car, it's not the same as a rocket. But it is a half-century of high achievement and contribution from a highly talented Ukrainian individual. It took me years to figure out the equation, which is UKU. UKU equals mastery of my discipline, if I'm a student there, times deeply ethical behavior, times the spirit of service. I want to contribute. I had the incredible privilege of spending an hour and a half with 22 students. I thought they were going to be computer science students, but they had historians, theologians, psychologists, sociologists, and computer science students. And it was honestly, beyond all of the numbers, one of the most extraordinary interactions I have ever had. And it was clear to me that I was looking at a group of people who want to be the best in their discipline, who want to exhibit deeply ethical behavior. They all got that. And who were driven and motivated by the spirit of service. Each one of them wanted to contribute. That's the organization that we're supporting. To continue being irritating, please write down the second person that you know who should know about UKU but doesn't. Write it on a piece of paper, write it in your mind. It could be Slavko, it could be Yarina, it could be Stefan. It doesn't have to be Ukrainian, it doesn't have to be Catholic. This story is a story that everybody should know. Let's talk about where we've gotten. So how many donors, or I will call them investors, how many investors in UKU are there? How many investors in UKU are there? 15,000. You say, wow, I agree with you. But let me try to split that up into three different perspectives. An optimist looks at this number and says, wow. A pessimist looks at this number and says, what? Well, let's assume that all of these are just US and Canada. It's not true, but let's assume it for the moment. There are 1 million Ukrainians in the US, 1 million in Canada. That's 2 million Ukrainians. Divide by 4, that's 500,000 families. %3 of Ukrainian families support UKU so far. That's what the pessimist says. What does the startup person say? Look at all this growth potential. Look at all of this growth potential. If only they knew the entire story. By the way, who here is an investor? Come on, come on. Who here is an investor? Tanya, an investor. You put money into an investment, okay? Yeah. No, we're not all. Stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, startups. What has been the best investment that you have ever made? Your family. Excellent. Education. Excellent. My best investment has been UKU. And I've been lucky because I've had some phenomenal returns from conventional companies and from startups. But when I force myself to think about this institution as an investor, and I look at dollars in versus results produced, there is no investment that I've made anywhere else that comes close to generating the direct, the indirect, the short-term, and the long-term results of UKU. So I am here to tell you that there are 1 million people out there who are proud of UKU, who want to visit UKU, who want to invest in UKU. They just don't know it yet, because we haven't yet given them the information that they need to make an informed investment decision. And I will continue. Now please write down number 3, a third person that you know, who should know about UKU, but doesn't yet know about it. I'm going to shift. What is a door? Anyone here from Europe? Anyone here from Canada? Anyone here from the United States? Okay. Your experience may be a little bit different than mine, but probably not that much. From an educational perspective, the door for me was open to a terrific grammar school education, even though we had 55 students in a class. For me, the door was open to a tremendous high school education at Regis, a Jesuit scholarship school. For me, the door was open to a university education, to a law school education, to a business school education. All of those doors were open in the United States. If I am a brilliant student in Enerhodar, or Odessa, or Ivano-Frankivsk, or Lviv. That statement is not true. The door to a world-class education is not open. It's not always there. Yes, for some it is. They get to the United States, they go to Harvard, they have a great career, they have a great job. But for most of us in the room, every door has been open. For most phenomenally talented students in Ukraine, those doors are closed. And I'm not even talking about ethical behavior and the spirit of service. I'm just talking about getting the kind of world-class education that a high order of talent ought to receive. And so for the first time when we had the banquet in Paris, and everybody was giving scholarships, and I said, why is everybody giving scholarships? Just give the money to the school. I finally realized that every time you give a scholarship, you make it possible for another top % student to go to UKU and get the kind of world-class education that they deserve, and to get more, to learn the ethical behavior imperative, and to absorb the spirit of service. Of course, now I'm going to ask you to write down the fourth person. A person that you know, that I know, and I have my list, who doesn't know about UKU and who needs to know about UKU. Now, why am I irritating you and torturing you with all of this? And it's for a very simple reason. How many alumni and donors do you think Harvard has, or Stanford has, or Oxford has, or Yale has? Let me save you the effort. It's a number between 100 and 200,000. What would people say about this university if in 3 years John got up and put up a slide and said there are 1 million people worldwide who support, in whatever amount, the Ukrainian Catholic University? It would be a bombshell. There is no university in the world that does that. Now, do you have to be Hercules? Do you have to have phenomenal powers? No. All you need to do is take those first 4 names, add 6 others to them. So you have a list of 10 names. And all you need to do is learn these phenomenal facts about UKU. And we've only scratched the surface of them. And on the 1st of every month, to all of those 10 people, send them a postcard or send them an email and just give them 3 of those facts. Not 4, 5, 6, or 7, just 3 of those facts. The rating of the journalism school, the quality of the computer science entrance, the rating of the brand of UKU, what has been happening in the business school. And don't ask them for money. Just let them know what this organization is doing. And after 6 months, ask them to make a list of 10 people and do exactly the same thing. And you'll find out that your postcards in the 1st and 2nd month will turn into a telephone call in the 4th and 5th month, because they're going to want to know what this unusual startup is doing. Now, who here likes arithmetic? There are, let's say, 100 of us in this room today. If you do this for 6 months, we will become 1,000. If we do this for 12 months, we will become 10,000. If we do this for 18 months, we will become 100,000. And if we do this for 24 months, we will become 1 million. Initially, people who know UKU, but I believe that they will all become not donors in UKU, but investors in UKU, and I know that it will be the best investment they make. Now, I know what you're thinking. It would take a miracle to do this. A miracle. Have you been to the campus? Okay. I say to you, one good miracle deserves another. Bishop Boris has done his job. It's now our turn to do ours. And I'm not asking you to risk your life. I'm not asking you to give away your fortune. I'm asking you to write 10 postcards on the 1st of every month for 6 months to let let people know. The biggest difference between the startups and Uku is the startups have built an invisible force called word of mouth. All of their customers talk about them. All of their engineers talk about them. All of their investors talk about them. If we can create that intensity of word of mouth for this startup that is called the Ukrainian Catholic University, it is amazing what will happen then. I'd like to close with a book. And this is a strange ending, but an important one. When we first met with Bishop Boris in Cambridge, my wife Christina and I, we had a long conversation, and it ended with something very simple. Bishop Boris said, Christina said, "What do you need?" And he said, "I just need you to come to Lviv and see what's there." And I knew how courageous he was when we did come. And what we found was nothing. There was nothing there. There was no church, there was no collegium, there was no office building, there was no Sheptytsky Center, there was nothing. And I thought, boy, Boris is really, really brave. We found nothing except for one thing: the unmistakable, unbreakable spirit of the people that were there. And it was the first time in my life that I saw the seed from which an entire forest grew. So in that spirit, has anyone here read Yuri Shchevelov? Has anyone read Druga Cherha? Our folks will provide you the link. Shchevelov was a writer who wrote in the mid-40s after World War II, a time of complete devastation when people had nothing and he kept writing. And in Druga Cherha, you will find about our literature, our theater, history of the church, our history, society, and politics. Why did I find this book? Because for years I've been looking for superb Ukrainian. And the language in this book is phenomenal. You need to read it with a dictionary, which is okay. You need to read it 2 or 3 times. But why do I say this to you? I looked for the language, but I found something else. I found a phenomenal language. I found an incredible thinker. And I found a deep humanity and great moral force. When you read this book in the article entitled Четвертий Kharkiv, when you hear about the creation of ersatz emotions to pour into the empty souls of the people of the city, you won't know whether you're reading about the Kharkiv of the 1930s or the United States of 2017. This book taught me who I am, not just biologically and genetically, but in terms of ideas and in terms of spirit. And in one of his articles, he writes about politics and struggle, and he says, this is all great, but what is the program that you are going to carry out? And that book made me incredibly proud to work at UKU, to donate to UKU, and to support UKU. Take a read, because it is, in my translation, Druga Cherha, Хроніка духової боротьби одного народу. You'll never look at UKU the same way again, because its meaning goes far beyond what I was able to initially understand. So thank you very, very much. The most important outcome of this conversation is your 10 names, your 10 postcards, your 10 emails. The most important outcome is to take a read of this book, but really the most important outcome is to look around and to admit to yourself that I'm really proud to be a part of this organization. Now, before I quit, I have been cursed with a job that requires me to travel around the world 3 or 4 days a week. And the benefit of it is that I have met some extraordinary people, mostly in the business world, But as luck would have it, it enabled me to meet two world-class mayors, Michael Bloomberg of New York and Andrii Sadovei of Lviv. It is a privilege to have this opportunity to speak in your house. It is a privilege to spend a few days in this unbelievably dynamic and alive city. And we are very, very grateful for your hospitality, and we are very, very grateful for who you are and what you do for this city and for all of us. Thank you very, very much. It was a real privilege to address this crowd. Thank you.